Hello and welcome to the sewing studio. Today I'm going to show you how to make this quilt using fat quarters. Now this design is called Rail Fence, and you can see here with this strong dominant red how it forms that shape. And this is perfect for using up all those odd fat quarters that you buy, like a pick and mix. When you pick them up, you think, what am I going to do with those? So we need to find something that has a strong colour. So we've got some fat quarter packs here in the shop. And if I was going to use these, I'd probably have the red as my dominant colour. There's one here with a brown that could be used, or a dark blue. So you're going to need 4 fat quarters. You're also going to need 1/2 metre of fabric for your border and 1/4 metre for your binding. You're going to need a neutral thread for your piecing. I've used a variegated thread for my quilting, so variegated would be nice. You're going to need a ruler, and I prefer this ruler here, which is 6.5 by 12.5. You're going to need some pins, and you're going to need a rotary cutter. And we've got all of these downstairs in our shop. So let me show you how we put this together. So I'm just going to move some of these things out of the way so I've got room to work. So I've chosen some odd fat quarters. And for those of you that watch me regularly, you'll see there's a bit of a theme here, because there's sort of a pinky purple. There's a couple of pinks. Let's just move those out of the way. There's a couple of pinks, and then there's this really dark background of navy with pinks and purples, and this is going to be my dominant piece that is going to be for the rail fence. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these. Now I'm going to cut 4 layers at once. You don't have to do this. You can cut each fat quarter separately, but I'm going to cut all 4. So the trick to this is line up your selvage edges, and if you've got one that has got a wider selvage, so this one is actually wider than this one, I always put that on the top, because when you cut through them, if you can't see that one underneath, you're going to end up with some white. So prepare your fabrics, making sure you've got the one with the biggest selvage on top. And then what I do is I press all 4 together to just hold them still. I find that helps with the cutting if I've pressed them all together. And now I'm going to cut the selvage so that I know that I've got my first straight line. The other thing you'll need is a nice sharp blade, because you're going through 4 layers of fabric. So now I'm going to measure 8.5 inches. So my strips are 8.5 by 2.5. Now you're probably thinking, why don't you just cut 2.5 inch strips that way and then subcut them into 8.5? But it actually holds better, and you'll get a better result if you start with a bigger piece. So let's go with 8.5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. So I'm going to put my ruler there. Now I'm left-handed, so you'll all be doing this from the opposite side. So I'm going to cut that at 8.5. And then I'm not going to move anything, I'm just going to go another 8.5. So there's my half. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just double check that I have got the half. Now I'm not going to throw these away, because the eagle-eyed viewers among you will have noticed that I had scrappy binding on the other quilt. So I'm going to keep these because these will come in handy for some scrappy binding. So now I'm going to turn these around and I'm going to subcut them at 2.5. So I'm just going to trim that edge so that I know that I've cut through all of them. And then using my ruler, I'm going to cut at 2.5. So I'm just lining that up. So that's one stack. And it's always worth checking your measurements, because we're doing it out of fat quarters. We haven't got any spares. So always check that you've actually got 2.5. Why am I telling you that? Because I've done it myself so many times. I've cut 2 and then thought, oh no, I haven't got any more fabric. So always double check your measurements. I'm going to give you a little teaching point here. If you haven't gone through all of your fabric, like I haven't here, don't seesaw backwards and forwards with your blade, because that will fray your fabric. Just very carefully, one quick movement with your blade. And you would do that until you'd cut all of your pieces. So for the purpose of today, I'm just going to join these up so you can see what the block looks like. Now, keep them in the same order, because what I want the block to look like is I want to make sure that I've got this dark blue. So if I lay it out, I'll show you how it's going to work. So I'm going to put them all in the same order. So just take a little bit of time shuffling your fabrics. Or I could do it that way round. The important one is this strong one with the blue. Yeah, I think I quite like that. So then I would make all my piles into that order before I went to the sewing machine. so that it makes life easier when you're sewing them all together. So that one, then that one. So I'm just going to take a minute to shuffle those, and then I'm going to go over to the machine. But before I do that, if you like what we do, don't forget to like and subscribe. And you can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget, everything that I've demonstrated here today is available in our shop. So I'm now going to sew my blocks together using a 1/4 inch seam, and I've got a foot here with a 1/4 inch guide. The important thing with this is to make sure that you sew your blocks in the right order. So I've sorted mine, and I'm going to start with the one with the blue background and then add the other ones to it. So just line them up, pin if you're not confident. But what I tend to do is I'm going to sew these two together, and then I'm going to chain piece the next two. So I'm going to pick up the next two, and I'm going to sew those two together. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew these two together. So you can do it individually if you want to, but for speed you could do some chain piecing. So I'm just going to get this one block done to show you. So this is our block, and I'm going to continue with all of them, but I need to just keep that one to one side to make sure that I'm putting it in the right order. And when I've got them all together, I'll talk to you about pressing. So I'm just going to pick up the next two, and I'm now going to just continue to sew until they're all together. So I've sewn my blocks together all in the same order. And I'm now going over to the iron to talk about pressing them. So we are going to set our seams. So just press the seam where you've sewn. And it is always worth doing this because it just makes it more accurate and your fabric doesn't move as much. And then just press to the darkest fabric. So that's the fabric that is going to be our rail fence. When I say it's going to be our rail fence, this is the main one that's going to form the shape of the rail fence. So I'm just going to give those all a good press. Now, for those of you that like to use steam, you could steam your blocks now that they're together. I don't use steam until the very end. So I'm just going to continue pressing these blocks, and then I'm going to show you how to lay it out. And once you've got all your blocks pressed, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to lay them out. So we are going to take our dark block, and that's going to go to the left hand side. And then we're going to turn it up the other way. So that's going along the top. So you can see here that your rows are going down, across. Your next one is going to come down, and then your next one is going to come across. So you can see that that's joining like that, and then down. So you can see we're forming this shape. And I'll just do as if I'm going to do the next row. Obviously you'd have all of your blocks, so I'm just going to show you how the next one would go, and that would go like that. So you can see the dark block is running this shape, and then it'll be here, and so on. So you would do that with all of your blocks, and then you would join them together. And so I'm just going back to the original quilt. So you can see here with the dark red how it's coming down to form that shape. And this one is 3 blocks by 4, so it measures approximately 33 inches by 40 inches. But that's because I've put an extra border, so you can make it as big as you want or as small as you want. You can also make this using a jelly roll. You just have to think about where your dark colour is placed. So any 2.5 inch strips. But I think this is great for a simple set of 4 fat quarters and a border. So on mine, you'll see that I've put a little dark border, and then I had some more of this fabric, so I've used this in my other border. So again, you can make your borders as big as you want, small as you want. You might want to put a little fillet in there. What I did was I used up, so here you can see the different fabrics. So I did a scrappy binding on mine. You could just have a plain colour binding, the choice is yours. And you can see here that I've got a variegated curved stitch going over the blocks. And this was a variegated thread that was red, green and cream. So I thought that's perfect. Nice, easy, simple quilting. And then I just came in 1/4 inch with a cream and stitched a quilting stitch there. I did go up a stitch length when I was doing my straight stitch. So I went up to a 3.5. And then the back was 1 metre of fabric that I had in my stash, and I've used that for the back. So really quick, easy quilt. Probably could do it in a day. Anyway, I hope I've inspired you to have a go at rail fence using fat quarters, and I look forward to seeing you next time here in the sewing studio.